Hey there, and welcome everyone back to the Empower Nutrition Podcast. I can't even tell you how excited I am to finally have corralled. I can't even say colleague because Ayla Brammer is just an absolute hero. I admire her work so much. She's just a rock star in the nutrition space, especially with respect to fertility. And I just can't wait for this discussion. So, Ayla, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me on, Erin.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to get into it. And our topic today is going to be really fun. We're going to talk about fertility nutrition, but we're going to focus a little bit around male fertility, which I think doesn't get enough discussion. And it sounds like you agree. So I really can't wait for this. Real quickly, I want to read your bio just to kind of frame it out a little bit. Ayla is a registered dietitian nutritionist, a functional medicine practitioner, and the founder and CEO of Fullwell, a fertility, wellness, and education brand. Her entire career focus has been to advance the health and empowerment of practitioners, patients, and families through nutritional science, functional medicine, and evidence-based holistic solutions. She's at fullwellfertility.com, or the Instagram is at fullwellfertility. Welcome again.
Thank you.
So I always just like to start with the question, the sort of the obvious question, but it fascinates me how people get niched into different areas of nutrition. Can you share a little bit more around your journey of like how did you get into nutrition and like why fertility?
Yeah. So, I'll start by just saying, fertility wasn't a common area of work when I started,
Mm.
but it is more so now, given the degree to which nutrition and lifestyle impact fertility. And I think that is being recognized, which is great to see. My work with couples in the fertility space really evolved over years in practice and truly was due to a need that I saw in my community. I came to learn that that was really reflective of a much larger need in our country over the years and over time. And when I was working with women struggling to conceive or with pregnancy loss, I realized that based on the research and honestly just a good amount of my own intuition, that I just knew that there was more that I could do, and it had to involve men too. So
Mhm.
in my private practice work, I began requiring, I went from kind of a general practitioner, to
Mm.
niching down into fertility, and then ultimately getting to a place where I would require both partners to be involved and work with me. And
Obsessed.
yeah, and that just, I mean, that was a game changer. I can think of the point in my private practice where I made that decision where I thought, you know what, I'm limited with how much I can do for you and support you in your fertility if your partner's not involved. And once I made that kind of a requirement, and and that was really, and of course it starts as a discussion, so everybody's on board,
Yeah.
but that was a game changer. And so to me, that's always, it's been some of the most rewarding work that I've done over the years. And Fullwell really was born as an adjunct, to my clinical practice. It was born out of a desire to get more evidence-based products and education to families and health
Mhm.
practitioners. And honestly, I think most people would be really shocked to learn how little evidence actually supports many supplement formulas on the market. And
Yeah.
given the stakes are so high, that's how I wound up now with Fullwell, the fertility, wellness, and education brand, and then my private practice, Boston Functional Nutrition, which has evolved to specialize in women's health, but also fertility. And I say that because in the fertility realm, again, I work with men too. Mhm.
Yeah. This is so fascinating because I find that usually if somebody's coming for me to get help with fertility, it tends to be the female partner or one of the female partners. But then it'll often almost seem like it might catch them off guard a little bit if I even want to involve, like, if they
Mhm.
have a male partner, like, especially him in the discussion. It's almost like we think, oh, like he has this like minimal contribution of like some DNA, but whatever. Like the woman is the one that has to like ovulate and make the egg and like carry the baby. So she's everything that matters. But tell me a little bit about that thinking in terms of like how important is like the male side of this.
Yeah, I mean, historically and today still, we think of men as having one role really in
Mhm.
fertility and
Yeah.
pregnancy and making babies, and that's in fertilization. And
Mm.
the reality is it goes so far beyond that. And I get really excited talking about this because I truly feel like we've labeled, fertility, infertility, and then even pregnancy and babies' health outcomes as in many pregnancy complications as women's health issues, and we address them as such. And the reality is, again, men's health, particularly paternal preconception health, so men's health before conceiving, has a huge influence over really common pregnancy complications. And so things like preterm birth, preeclampsia, pregnancy loss.
Yeah.
In fact, and I know we'll get into this, but men's preconception health actually influences more so than women the development of the placenta, which is the organ that you develop through pregnancy to,
What?
yeah, to nourish baby. And the men's role in the signaling that happens has even an even greater influence over the health and function. And so they've been able to, a lot of the research, the underlying mechanisms of action around the way that men's health influences pregnancy health and baby's health is via the way that it influences the health of the placenta. And so i
Wow.
i just think it's so exciting to be focusing in on this because one, I mean, really, we're talking like the ultimate preventative medicine, here, because
Yeah.
if we can kind of come back to this period preconception and make some actually pretty targeted but not crazy interventions, not anything mind-blowing,
Mm.
and we can talk about those things, then it can have a huge impact on, I mean, we're talking generations, really.
Yes. I was just talking, it's so crazy. I had a prenatal consult right before this, and I was talking with her about that. Of like, we think of genes as like you just get this blueprint from your parents, and then
Hmm.
that blueprint is who you are. But genes have these switches that can get turned on and off by and
Hmm.
things in the environment, like profoundly, of course, nutrition, and then this the way that that switch is flipped, whether it's turned on or off by like methylation, for
Yeah.
example, is heritable, so that you can
Yes.
have changes in your genetic expression that persist across generations that were impacted by things
Hmm.
like nutrition and other environmental factors. And so that's a game changer, right? Because we think, oh, like my genes are what they are, and like the sperm is going to contribute what it does. But no,
Hmm.
you have environmental control over some of the ways that the genetics are expressed within that. And
Yeah.
then tell me more about the signaling around the placenta. Is that genetic based, or is there something else about like the sperm quality that impacts like the placenta?
Yeah, there's a number of things starting even preconception that sperm actually signal. So I mean, sperm will, and different kind of compounds and things within semen will actually signal to the female reproductive tissue to help support fertilization. So help prepare female reproductive organs
Yeah.
for fertilization, which is really kind of cool. And then there's further nutrients and trace minerals contained in semen and sperm. There's all of these, quite a bit of DNA, with all these epigenetic tags, right, that
Yeah.
are part of the equation and go into, once fertilization happens, it's influencing, not just, it's not done there, right? It's
Mhm.
the development of that embryo, implantation, and then again sending out additional signals for the development of that placenta. So it's yeah,
Hmm.
it's really interesting. And I love what you're saying about describing epigenetics, because that really is it. And it makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, if we think about how we've evolved, or evolution as a whole, right?
Yeah.
It's really by design, that the body is going to look at what is the current state of affairs, especially in that immediate period
Yeah.
preconception. What is the environment telling our bodies? What are we putting into our bodies? Is our resources plentiful, or are they sparse? What do things look like? And all of that is information that's passed on and influences babies' long-term health. And so that again is what points to kind of like that really preventative medicine kind of piece. Because if dad
Mhm.
has metabolic issues preconception, we can see that being more likely, increasing the likelihood based on the research in babies.
Yes. Okay. I've got to ask you about like IVF. I mean, obviously, in some situations it needs to happen, but
Mhm.
it really made me think of that when you were saying like there's things about potentially like not the sperm itself, but like just the semen and like everything else that's there in terms of like the trace minerals and the way it like prepares the environment almost for like that
Yeah.
healthy placenta. Like how does that change in IVF, and like what do you think is like the impact of that? If you I mean it's impossible to fully know, but do you think that there's like any like limitations there?
Yeah, it's a question that I've thought a lot about, and obviously approach it with sensitivity because,
Yeah.
of course, as you know in your
Yeah.
practice, and I know very well working the space for years, reproductive technologies have made it possible for, families to grow, and that's a wonderful thing. I also am extremely motivated to work in this field because I have seen how some targeted and oftentimes really simple, but personalized recommendations can help couples avoid the financial, emotional, physical stress that IVF and other reproductive kind of interventions inevitably come with. I mean, it's not generally, even though it's a technology that can come in when we need it, it's generally not the first choice for any any
Yeah.
couple, right? Because in my experience working with couples, it's been like it feels depersonalized. It feels like
Sure.
it's not how you envision, right, it to
Yeah.
happen. But so that all being said, we don't know, and it would be speculation at this point, really, what the long-term impact is from like an epigenetics perspective on IVF. You would think there would be like a little more research on that. I'm not sure there's a
Yeah.
ton of motivated interest into,
Sure.
into that piece. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think it's very reasonable to think that there would be an impact of some kind over
Sure.
time, and maybe not at the individual level, but we might see it at the population level as these things become more
Yeah.
widespread. So
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Not that we're, I mean, obviously, in some situations, like I'm just saying, for example, maybe you have like a same sex couple. It's like
yeah,
you're that's happening. So it's not
yeah,
necessarily like a bad thing, but it's fascinating to kind of think that it's not, um, that there's aspects about what the male contribution is besides like the sperm
yeah.
itself. That's kind of
I mean,
crazy.
ultimately, I think even if you wind up going down that route and you do need or choose to do something like IVF or another intervention like that, the best possible scenario is to really be focusing on that 3 to 6 month window, even
Yes.
maybe even a little longer, but preconception, because everything
Yeah.
you're doing there is influencing the developing sperm, the developing egg that you'll ultimately
Mhm.
ovulate or they'll retrieve, right? And that's a lot of those epigenetic tags,
Yeah.
are there already. So I think even if you go down that route, I always like to approach it like, how do we set ourselves up for the best possible chances of success and lowering complications?
Got it. Okay. So let me ask you this. Here I am. I'm 39. I'm trying to have a baby. I've convinced my husband that, like, hey, buddy, you're part of this equation, like with our infertility problems. I've got him in your clinic. He's on board, but he doesn't want complicated. What are some of your tips for him of like which directions do you take it with him in terms of like it could be food, it could be environment, it could be supplements. Like what's your kind of like generic protocol or direction you would go from there?
Yeah. So, I mean, as much as I love, I would, once, so let me start I'll start with the top four things that
Okay.
I
Yes. I know it's a
recommend.
hard, it's like,
Yeah.
let me ask you 100 questions at once.
Yeah, I'll start well, this is how I would start, especially because that scenario you just described is really typical. I may have
Yeah.
kind of convinced, that both partners to work with me, but,
Let's be honest.
usually, yeah, like usually the male partner,
He's gonna
needs
drug in there.
yeah, he needs right, he needs a little convincing, and honestly, like, I mean, I found maybe not really super engaged, in the beginning, like just not and this is I don't it's like not the fault of men. I mean, we really just haven't
Yeah.
nobody really understands, I think, or is talking about the impact, and how important it is. And I think that if men knew, if men really understood like what they're doing, what they're helping with, how they're helping support healthier pregnancies and preventing complications that are going to impact them as well, like pregnancy loss or
Yeah.
pregnancy complications that can compromise labor and delivery and baby's long-term health, I think that they
Yeah.
would want to do them. So
Yeah.
anyway, my top 4 things. So, I mean, first and foremost, and put very simply, we want to really flood the body with the right stuff, to
Yeah.
help combat the things that we can't control, such as age or, certain environmental exposures. So, top of that list would be eating a diet high in antioxidants and omega-3 fatty acids. So, I know everyone always expects me to kind of come in with what like a list of things not to eat, but really first I would just focus on tons of fruits and vegetables, seafood, including shellfish, which is uniquely high in sperm supporting nutrients like zinc
Yes.
and selenium.
Big time.
Um, Two, no surprise, but I would say exercise routinely, because that really, the way I describe it to clients is it helps just really pump that fresh, oxygenated, nutrient-rich blood through the body. And that's important because I mean it's the nutrients, it's the antioxidants, it's like getting oxygen, but it's like nitric oxide production. It's just
Yeah.
getting everything circulating is actually really important it's important for all humans, but for men's fertility, and women's fertility in particular. 3, getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, ideally as closely in sync as possible with the light and the dark cycles,
Mhm.
because our circadian rhythm is very much tied to our reproductive health. And it's one of the reasons why we see more fertility issues in shift workers.
Yeah.
Um, so not always something that can be controlled. And I know with my practice clients, we've done some
Yeah.
hacking, if someone is a shift worker working nights, we'll do
Yeah.
like melatonin, a very reproductive function, fertility protecting antioxidant. We'll do like melatonin at the time of day or night that makes sense, so there's things
Mhm.
that you can do to help combat that if you are, but that's really important. Not having too wonky a schedule as if possible, and getting like bright light in the morning, just trying to work with the light and dark cycles.
Yeah.
It's actually, I mean, we tend to see fertility rates really increase like in the spring, in the summer, versus kind of decline over like the darker months in certain parts of the country. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
um, yeah. And then 4, the last thing I would just say, I mean, is daily supplementation. I obviously do believe in that, even though I will always say food first.
Yeah, of course.
But, we're not going to be able to do all the things every single day. So I think a really high quality supplement, like, Full Well's Vitality and Virility formula can really help fill the gaps and support sperm quality, and also just combat modern environmental lifestyle kind of
Yeah.
stressors that we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say, I'm curious if you think that, like, let's say I'm like, look, we're all in, we're going to the organic farms and we are 100% doing our diet correctly for 6 months.
Hmm.
Do you think that that then is sufficient for everyone? Or do you think that there are situations where there needs to be some type of like therapeutic supplement dosing that really like, first, this may be a genetic situation or environmental situation or
Yeah.
whatever. You really need to be getting more of something than you even could get from perfect food.
Yeah, I think it depends, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of factors here. And I think we're on the same page probably with this, with our functional medicine background. It really depends on one, can you get a personalized assessment, of your diet and
Yeah.
where the gaps are, right? And come up with a plan that you feel like you can consistently get in the right nutrients with. I'll tell you
Mhm.
that in order to do it, it's going to require, without supplementation, I think it's going to require like incorporating organ meats. It's going to
Yeah.
require plenty of seafood and shellfish,
Yeah.
and things that I think are not consistently part of most people's diets.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that piece would be part of it. But then you've also got to kind of consider how well, so you're getting the nutrients in, how well are you absorbing and
Right.
utilizing them, right? So does digestion need some support? Do you have some genetic kind of factors that would lend you to needing more of a certain nutrient? any medications, even just really common over the counter ones, right, will have the potential to deplete some
Yeah.
important nutrients and antioxidants. And then, like, what does your environment look like?
Mhm.
Because you could be eating organic, which is great, but like, is your work environment or home environment got, fragrances, for example, with
Yes.
phthalates and
Yes.
endocrine disruptors, and the
Mhm.
Glade plugins, in the walls and air
Yeah.
fresheners, that kind of thing, or other kind of chemicals and things like that. So I think
Mhm.
those are all considerations. I think it's possible. It's definitely possible, and I want to believe that, that it's
Yeah.
possible to get everything we need from food. I think it's difficult, and a lot I have found with fertility, a lot of usually when the by the point that I'm seeing couples, they've been trying, and
Mhm.
the ideal scenario is we're talking a few months or even years before you even think you're going to try to conceive, and we can get things in a really good place. But usually there's a time crunch factor here. So
Yes.
so that's another way that supplementation, I think, can help just kind of
Catch
come
you up.
in. Yeah, yeah, and replete faster.
Yeah, because it could be, for most people, it's like decades of depletion that you're kind of trying
Mhm.
to make up for. And I'm getting pregnant in
Yeah.
3 months, or
Yes.
like
Yes.
hopefully not even, like possibly even you're trying to do it sooner. So it's like, okay,
Mhm.
it helps accelerate the thing. But yeah,
Yep. Yep.
that made me too think about the way that like with women, there's this like sort of obvious, like we know that there's like the ticking time clock, right? Of like, okay, it's like horrible, I should say, but gosh, I don't know what I saw that somebody was joking the other day. They're like, do you hear that sound? That's the sound of your eggs drying up.
Oh god. Yeah.
Well, like, what about men? Do they? I feel like we just think that men have like no clock, and we hear about these like 70-year-old men, they're having babies.
Right.
Is there any like time sensitive thing to this for men in terms of like their
Mhm.
age, or what does that look like?
Yeah, it's very similar for women and men in that so men can they can get away with a little bit older. However, really when it comes to age and fertility, and I should just kind of back up here, is that it's really more a matter of the cumulative effect of depletion and stress on the body. And I like to
Mm,
talk about the like
yeah,
oxidative stress on the body, and combating that. So I think, you can, in a sense, almost reverse the clock for both men and women if you come in and really focus on flooding the body with the right nutrients, lots of antioxidants, cleaning up where environment and modern lifestyle is really affecting. So, I mean, we definitely do see more pregnancy complications, more risk for infertility with men over age 45,
mm,
and just more longer term health impact on babies. So there is an age component here. But again, what I've seen when I've really dug into the literature is the underlying reason for it is this cumulative depletion and effects of stress on the body. You're
yeah,
more likely to have more oxidative stress, which means you're less likely to have enough antioxidants to support and protect sperm, which they're very
yeah,
sensitive to oxidative stress and can get damaged very
yeah.
easily. And it's why probably the number one nutrition recommendation is to flood the body with antioxidant rich fruits and vegetables.
Yes, that's so fascinating because it's aging to some degree does have those elements to it, but I think in our modern world we have it really kind of like precipitates accelerated aging.
Yes,
And so we see
absolutely.
like even now a shortening of the lifespan for like
Hmm.
the first time in generations because of how much our lives modern lifestyle accelerates that accumulation of like oxidative stress and metabolic
Yep.
dysregulation. And yeah, that's so interesting. So, Ayla, tell me a little bit about Full Well, and maybe if it's okay, could I frame this question a little bit in the sense of like, look, I think we can start off on a note of like, for anyone that's listening doesn't know this, I'll just tell you right now, like the prenatal gummies that you can get at like the big box store are not worth your time,
Mhm.
and like unfortunately even the prescription prenatal that you might get, like mine, I know came with like a nice hearty dosing of folic acid and
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
ALA instead of EPA and DHA, and it was
Yeah.
just trash. So let's not even talk about those like off the shelf sort of like prenatal things, but like let's talk about the world of like there's a whole like tier of supplements. It's like professional lines for clinicians.
Mhm.
let's say I'm going in there into my like Full Script or my Elevate or whatever, and I'm picking from like the prenatal nutrition options in there. What was it about that space that made you feel like there's something missing here and I need to create a new like
Mhm.
world of prenatal supplements?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I mean, I'm a health practitioner,
Mhm.
and it really, how I approached this was I wasn't looking to just get into the nutraceutical industry and be part of that's obviously a very flooded space. There's a ton of options out there, but I did not see when I really was evaluating the formulas that I wanted to use with my clients, my fertility clients. When looking at them, the doses, the forms of the nutrients, there was really just a lot of the formulas or all the formulas I could find were problematic in some way, and surprisingly little evidence to back up
Yeah.
the amounts in particular, but also the forms of the nutrients that were used. And to me, that kind of goes to show. I mean, the majority of supplements on the market are not created by health practitioners. They may have a
Mhm.
health practitioner weigh in on the formula itself, but they're not having somebody like watch every step of the process, which now that I am behind the curtains, which was another huge motivator
Eye-opening.
get into this. Yeah, that was the other piece was I felt like there was really a lack of transparency, even in the professional lines, where you have to like as a health practitioner, I had to really like dig for the information. It was like tough
Yeah.
to get. And I was like, this should be easier. Like the consumer should be able to, health practitioners, consumers should be able to get testing data on every single lot. They should be able to understand the quality control measures and not have to rely on a company just saying we're exceptional quality. That's not enough for me. That's marketing. So, and I do think that there's a little bit of a misconception that just the professional lines are all better quality than consumer brands. And the reality is, I mean, and I know you do this, Erin, I'm sure, but like we still have to vet those.
Yeah.
Like we absolutely do. That can be a marketing strategy too. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, for me, I wanted to get behind the curtain, test and understand every single raw ingredient I was putting in there, why, and the amounts that I was doing, and have relationships with the suppliers,
Yeah.
see the manufacturing and how it's happening, testing every lot, I did so much research and development around even testing the finished product, which you'd be surprised. Most companies don't test the finished product to see if it matches the label claims,
Yeah.
which blows my mind. So what
Yeah.
you see on the label might not be what's actually in your product per serving. Especially, this is really important when it comes to like multi-ingredient products, like a multivitamin, where everything is different sizes and weights. And so it's really important to know that what's in the end product is what it says on the label, that there's no other contaminants that we'd want to be concerned about. We test for all the heavy metals. We test for glyphosate and BPA and phthalates. We do this all through an independent third party lab. So you're not relying on our in-house,
Sure.
presumably more biased,
Sure.
lab results. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
So.
amazing. So great job. And then what can you like? I mean, obviously there's multiple products, but maybe tell me a little bit about like the formulations in terms of like the
Mhm.
dosing. What do you think are some limitations in terms
Yeah.
of like what you were seeing in like either product forms or dosing or combinations before?
Yeah. So for both the prenatal and men's vitality and virility, what I've seen in multivitamins in particular is there's usually a lack of the nutrients that are most critical to get in supplement form for a few
Mm-hmm.
reasons. So for me, choline choline and magnesium are exceptionally important for fertility. They're important through most stages of life, but they both play a role in methylation in
Mm-hmm.
early embryo development, in the neural tube closure. So think neural tube defects.
Mm-hmm.
They play a role in the placental development, in brain health, in long-term cognitive health of baby. I mean, magnesium plays a role in normalizing healthy blood pressure in mom and dad, and blood sugar balance. I mean, those are two nutrients that are like just so
Yeah.
important, and
Gold.
but they're large. They're really big.
Mm-hmm.
And so your first red flag for any quality multi, especially aimed at fertility and pregnancy, would be if it's a one a day, if
Yeah.
it's a gummy or a one a day. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
you can't even get those like enough of those nutrients in a 3 a day. That's why our capsule, we have the serving size we do on our products. It really is because if you don't get to that level, you're going to compromise on the amount of really critical nutrients. It's not the B vitamins, which are tiny, it's the bigger ones. So
Yeah.
that piece is important. Also, I put really evidence-based amounts of vitamin D,
Mhm.
in the product. So vitamin D is the most well-researched nutrient, I mean, that
Yeah.
we have. Like, we have randomized clinical control trials on it, which is not always the case for nutrients. And
Yeah.
so that's one that there was not enough vitamin D to really match what the research shows as helping support healthy ovulation and fertilization and baby skeletal development,
Yeah.
immune function. So
Mhm.
I also put 4,000 IUs of vitamin D in both of those formulas. So those are, I could keep going. I mean,
Yeah.
but those are a few of the big reasons.
Yes, I love that, and I know we could talk all day, but I think those are a few great examples of what I've seen a lot, even in the like professional line space, where there really are critical things that are missing, or that were like the pixie dust concept of like you knew
Yes,
I was
yes.
looking for this on the label, so you put in like a tiny sprinkle, and then
Hmm.
you just gotta hope that I didn't know what dosing would be good.
Yeah, I love that description. That is exactly it.
But yeah, you got the full round out, and then tell me for the men's product, or just men and infertility in general. You kind of alluded to it earlier with some of the foods you mentioned, but what are some of the nutrients that you really
Yeah.
wanted to like? You discussed it, the vitamin D, the magnesium, the choline across both genders, and then like, is there anything for men that's like, hey guys, like you really need to be focusing on this nutrient?
Yes. So, zinc. Zinc is a big one
Okay.
for men. And there's a good dose. It's a sizable dose in the Vitality and Virility. I put 50 milligrams in there
Dang.
of an easier to tolerate zinc. So I will say that you do want to take this with food, in divided doses. But zinc is incredibly supportive for all sperm parameters. So it will help with motility, so how the sperm moves and swims, so to speak, morphology, the shape, and
Mm,
overall, it can actually even help with overall count. So
yeah.
zinc has been shown time and time again in the research, and it has to be at a certain level. Like, we're not talking 5-10 milligrams of zinc. It's really
Mhm.
50 milligrams is where we see in the research there being this tremendous impact on sperm quality, and I've seen it in practice over the years to really support and influence when we've been measuring doing semen analysis. I've seen zinc have a really significant impact. So that's a big one. Selenium is another one, and chromium. So selenium acts as a really important antioxidant. It almost kind of turns on like a fire hose of antioxidants through its
Yeah.
its activity, and so that's kind of the mechanism for selenium. And you can get a good amount of selenium in things like Brazil nuts, but again, I
Right.
think, can you
Yeah.
consistently do it? And so
Yeah.
it's in Vitality and Virility to help with that protection of sperm. And yeah, and I said chromium as well. That helps quite a bit with blood sugar and insulin resistance. Any type of metabolic issue in mom or dad is going to have a negative influence on reproductive health, because the two systems talk to each other. They're
Mhm.
reciprocally regulated, is another way to put it. And so if something's happening with the metabolic system, and we see blood sugar imbalances and insulin resistance, or under eating,
Yeah.
which that can also happen, then you're going to see reproductive function and reproductive hormone production imbalance be impacted. So that's another important piece.
Okay. Yeah, that's so good. And then, what would be a protocol with this men's virility product? Is it like safe long term, or is it more like, hey, use it for 3 months or 6 months, or what do you recommend there?
Yeah, yep. It would be safe as a long term. I would say, the zinc is high. So you want to make sure, if you're working with someone, that you're also eating foods that do have some copper in it,
Mhm.
to help balance that out. We might put a small amount of copper in the future, but generally men tend to have on the side of more excess copper than
Right.
too little. So ultimately I felt really good about that. So yeah, I mean, I've got every every man in my life, on it, fertility, wise or not,
Yeah.
taking that. So and they feel really good on it. So it's
Yeah.
a great multivitamin for general overall wellness, but definitely targeted for reproductive health.
Cool. Okay. Ayla, this is amazing. And then maybe tell me a little bit about the rest of the line in terms of like women, how would they use
Hmm.
the full well line?
Yeah, so how we started was really with our prenatal multivitamin. So
Mm.
there's Fullwell's prenatal multivitamin, and that's I launched that about 3 years ago now, actually,
Gee,
next month,
oh,
which is
six
it's
days.
crazy.
Oh my
It's
God.
been it's been a journey, let me tell you.
Feels
But
like 5 minutes.
yeah,
Time goes so fast.
it does. It really does. Yeah, I launched it right before I had my second baby, but which is not when you launch a new product, but
Yeah,
that's what I
yeah.
did. So yeah, so the prenatal multivitamin is it's award winning now. We've gotten really great press on it. It's been
Awesome.
around. It's very well tolerated. That's a evident again approach it from evidence based quality perspective. So that's and we try, and I also try, and one of the reasons why we're not in full scripts and some of the dispensaries is I've tried to really keep the price point under $50, which is not easy to do for this potent
Right.
a multi, which can really take the place of a lot of individual
Yeah.
supplements. So there was a balance there that I had to consider, and ultimately landed on as trying to keep it as accessible as possible. So that's the prenatal multivitamin. And then there's the men's vitality and virility. We just launched that at the end of last year, and that in 2021, and that was meant to be the counterpart, to the prenatal.
Hmm. Yeah.
Our third product is Nourish Nerves, which I'm also an herbalist, and
Mhm.
I just feel like there's such a lack of support for
Yeah.
pregnant and breastfeeding women when it
Mm.
comes to sleep and stress, and
Yeah.
you're just kind of told, that nothing is safe, right? Like stay away from
Yeah.
all herbs. You can't take
Yes.
anything, and I know that's not true. As an herbalist, there are safe herbs that could be very supportive, and so I formulated a very gentle, safe herbal tincture that's just, it taste great all on its own, but it's really nice to add to like warm water as a tea at night
Amazing.
to help support. I think we all need some nervous system support these days, right? So,
Awesome. Oh,
um,
that's so
yeah.
good.
And then just lastly, the fourth product that I really felt was needed, and this has been years in the making, believe it or not, but as well is a essential fatty acid product. So
Yeah, I was thinking about
yeah. So
that.
that's coming. That's coming. And that's
Great.
been a long time coming because I was trying to source sustainable, high quality, the best product. And it's tough to do. It might, with the standards that I'm really maintaining for all of our products. But that the essential fatty acids, fish oil is separate from the
Yeah.
prenatal. And I really encourage people, if you don't do full well, just to look for a prenatal that does not contain multi. I don't think multis should contain essential fatty acids. I have a
Yeah.
lot of concerns with the stability and oxidation that happens when you
Mhm.
combine that. It's just it's going to be a problem. And as you know, I and would probably agree with, it's worse to take oxidized
Yes.
fatty acids than it is to
Yes.
not take them at all.
Yes. The combined and like don't be digging through that sale bin at whatever store you're
Oh
walking
gosh,
through
yeah.
looking for some fish oil. I mean, that is
No,
definitely
no.
okay, more concerns. I don't even want to say oxidized because that might not be even the top problem there, but
Yeah, right.
one of the problems.
Hmm.
So yes, Ayla, I can't wait for that. And I could ask you. I already thought of like 10 questions on that topic. So maybe next time we could do
Yeah,
one on omega-3 fats and nutrition as well.
that would be great. Thank you for having me, Erin.
Yeah, so everybody, if you want to check it out, please go ahead over there and check out fullwellfertility.com. And they've graciously given us a code that you can use at checkout. You can use the word empowered with a D to get a 10% discount off of your initial order. Plus, they also have this amazing subscribe and save option, which I'm obsessed with that for whenever I can do it. And you get an additional 10% off of that. So it sounds like a 20% discount if you use the code EMPOWERED and you subscribe and save. And that is amazing. You'll probably be paying less for that than you would if you just walked into and bought some like not great prenatal supplement. And this way you're getting the real deal and it'll be impactful. So thank you so much, Ayla.
Thank you, Erin.
This was fun. And we'll talk to you next time when you get that omega-3 product out. I can't wait.
Sounds good.
All right. Take care.